UFC 294 just took place. Honestly, one of the worst pay-per-views in recent memory. Co-main event was incredibly disappointing. Ankalaev versus Walker ended horribly. And Volk just was so stubborn and stupid to take that fight. He wasn't ready. His belly was jiggling around. It's sad to see him get finished like that, but Islam's the best lightweight on the planet. There's no denying it now. So I'm gonna give you my full card breakdown, starting with Shara Magomedov versus Bruno Silva. Magomedov, horrible defensive wrestling, but fantastic kicks, was able to really damage Bruno Silva. Silva got a couple of good shots off at the end of the first round, but other than that, just got some good takedowns, but didn't really do anything with them. Magomedov was able to elbow off his back a lot of really good kicks from him, and that's what won him the fight by a decision, which there were so many decisions on this card. The prelims were pretty awful. Next fight is a woman's fight. It was just a typical woman MMA moment. Nothing to really say. Nathaniel Wood versus Muhammad Naimov. Muhammad Naimov is a dirty cheater. He kicked him in the nuts twice, or kneed him in the nuts twice in a row, and then kicked him in the nuts. Cage grabbed at least twice. He's much bigger than Nathaniel Wood, and Nathaniel Wood arguably could have won, or it should have been a draw if the round two, the ref took a point like he should have done. But Naimov squeaked out the first two rounds, and Wood almost finished him at the end of the third, but this wasn't enough. Nathaniel Wood needs to go back to bantamweight. He is way too small for featherweight. Next up, Mike Breeden versus Anshul Jubilee. Jubilee was doing good the first two rounds, showing some decent kickboxing, decent striking. And then Mike Breeden just turns into a madman and starts just piecing up Jubilee in the third round. It looked like he just scared Jubilee into submission, and then Breeden just was landing bombs on him, and Jubilee had nothing left, and he got TKO'd. Really sad for him. I'm sure the UFC will give him another shot, though. They got to be desperate to tap into that Indian market. Next, Abu Azaitar versus Cedricus Dumas. Horrible fight. I mean, they are middleweights. We know middleweights are horrible, but Cedricus Dumas, man, and Abu Azaitar are just the bottom of the barrel of middleweights. But Dumas just barely won. Nothing really to say. Very boring fight. Horrible performance by both of them. Next up, this was weird to watch. Javid Basharat versus Victor Henry. Ended in a no contest because Basharat apparently exploded one of Victor Henry's testicles. It didn't look like that bad of a groin shot. It looked like we've seen a lot worse, but Victor Henry was crying and screaming in pain. I've never seen anything like it, and they had to call off the fight. So really unfortunate ending. The first round was pretty interesting. It was really close, but I think Basharat definitely won it. So I don't know. We'll see what he has next for us. And I think Victor Henry might be done after that. Next up, Muhammad Yahya versus Trevor Peek. Another really sloppy, amateurish fight. Trevor Peek got the decision victory, but just, I mean, we know how unique Trevor Peek's style is. Let's put it that way. You know, standing hammer fist, just charging in like a maniac, but just bad technique. I think he has potential, though, to be honed, to be a pretty decent fighter, but he isn't a good fighter right now. And for Muhammad Yahya, that guy just looks like a freak. He looks like he didn't even want to fight. He was just not even really doing anything. It was mainly just Trevor Peek's activity that won the fight. So now, when Muhammad Mokaev getting a round 3 submission over Tim Elliott, Muhammad just becomes a different fighter in round 3. I don't know what it is, but round 3 Mokaev is a mythical fighter. He lost the first round to Tim Elliott. In the second round, you could give it to Tim Elliott as well, although you could score to Mokaev. But Tim Elliott was, I think he could have finished Mokaev, but he kept landing knees to a grounded opponent. But I mean, was it really grounded? That rule is so stupid. The ref stopped the fight, but then gave Tim Elliott back his position. But Muhammad's already recovered by that point, and he was able to reverse the position really well. It was very impressive, but he was able to get a nice submission victory over Tim Elliott, so putting him in the top 10. So we'll see what he does next in the flyweight division. But I think fighters like Manel Kape, Kai Kara-France, Moreno, I think they're going to be way too much for him right now. But he's very, very young, and he can still get a lot better from this point. All right, moving on to the pay-per-view. The first 2 fights of the pay-per-view were absolutely amazing. We have Said Nurmagomedov getting a nasty guillotine over Mugafarov. Mugafarov was just swinging in like a retard, and Said just was chopping at him with kicks, poking at him, annoying him, and Moon just rushed in like an amateur, and Said just cinched up that guillotine. It was so tight. He knew it was over once he got it in. You could see the look on his face before Moon tapped. He knew he had it, and he even let go of the choke before the ref pulled him away. That's how confident he was. So really great performance. We know how good he is because he kind of got robbed against Jonathan Martinez. You can't give Martinez that fight, but he had a super, super close fight with Jonathan Martinez, and Jonathan Martinez just smoked Adrian Yanez. So very, very promising prospect in the bantamweight division. You want to keep your eye on Said. Most entertaining Dagestani by far, in my opinion. Now, Ikram Aliskerov smoked Warley Alves. Can't say I'm surprised. Warley Alves was an out-of-shape welterweight. He looks like he's 40 years old, although I think he's only like 32. But Ikram Aliskerov hit him with a lot of good stuff. Hit him with a flying knee, which started the finishing sequence, and he just dominated. I was really disappointed when Nasruddin Imavov pulled out of the fight, because that fight would have been so much more entertaining, so much more competitive. Would have been really interesting to see how that fight would have played out, but instead Ikram kind of just got a layup. Now, this fight, this was so annoying, so unfortunate. Johnny Walker and Magomed Ankalaev ends in a no contest in round 1. Although it could have been I don't understand how it wasn't a disqualification win for Johnny Walker, because Ankalaev kneed Walker in the head while he was grounded. Peter Yan did the same thing against Aljamain Sterling. Yet they gave Aljamain Sterling the disqualification win, while Johnny Walker and Ankalaev's fight gets a no contest. I don't know how they decide the difference between those two, but it was really weird, because the doctor told the ref to call the fight, but then Walker was like, no, I want to keep fighting, and he shoves the refs and like keeps running towards Ankalaev, and he did it like 3 or 4 times, and they had to separate him. It was absolutely crazy. You could tell Ankalaev was fucking pissed off. He wanted that fight to continue, and I think Walker did too, but the doctor just didn't like what he was saying when he was asking him questions, so they call the fight off. It's no contest. Really unfortunate for Ankalaev, because that's just going to keep putting him further and further away from getting a title fight. So we'll see what happens next in his career. But moving on to the co-main event, we have Kamaru Usman versus Khamzat Chimaev. Pretty disappointing. Khamzat Chimaev is a round one, the best round one fighter maybe ever. But then after round one, he just falls off a cliff. He lost round two. And round three was close. You could make an argument that this fight's a draw. If round one's a 10-8 for Chimaev, which I think it should be a 10-8. I can understand it being a 10-9, but I would have scored it a 10-8. Round two goes to Usman, and then round three, I wouldn't be surprised if Weasel makes a breakdown video where he gives it to Usman, or gives it a draw to Usman. So, really disappointing to see Khamzat Chimaev just fall off a cliff after round one. He dominated round one, but after round one, it just didn't do anything. He was just looking at Usman. Usman was, round two, landing his jab, landing his two. Round three, it was kind of more of the same, but then Chimaev got a takedown about halfway through and was able to control Usman till the very end. But then they stood up and started swinging and banging, and I think Usman kind of got the better of the exchanges. So on damage, you really maybe could make an argument for Usman winning round three, but again, I wouldn't be upset if the judges gave it to Chimaev, or it was a draw, or if they gave it to Usman. So the judges couldn't have scored that fight poorly, because all three outcomes are justifiable. But another interesting thing, though, is that after the post-fight interview with Chimaev, DC kind of said, like, hey, the winner's going to get a title fight, and Chimaev just kind of like, I don't care. I've made my money. And he just doesn't seem to have the killer instinct in him, the drive that he used to have, because I think he's made a lot of money fighting in the UFC, so he just got paid a lot of money now. So I don't know, it's kind of disappointing to see Chimaev lose that killer in him that gave him his rise to stardom that he is now. But I don't know, we'll see what he does next with this title shot that he absolutely doesn't deserve. Dricus du Plessis deserves the title shot way more than Khamzat does, so we'll see. But the main event, Islam head kicks Volkanovski, rocks him bad, finishes him with ground and pound. Volkanovski shouldn't have taken this fight, man. His belly was jiggling around in there. He just had surgery. I mean, Islam's been preparing for this fight for so long. Not specifically for Volk, but he's been training for so much longer than Volk has. No injury. Well, as we know, he had no injuries, unlike Volk, and Islam's just too good for Volk to come in on short notice and beat him. The only reason the first fight was so close is because of all the advantages Volk had fighting in Sydney, Australia. The rehydration time, the crowd giving him, well, the crowd wouldn't really make that much of a difference, but the rehydration played a big factor into it. And the amount of time he had to move up to lightweight played a huge factor into helping him do as well as he did in the first fight. But Islam's just too good to not lose to Volk, or to not get the victory that he did, man. He was just so much stronger, so much bigger. Volk did stuff a takedown and kind of had Islam against the cage, but Islam was landing good knees to the body. Was able to separate. just landed a beautiful head kick. Volk had his hand up, but it kind of slid off and hit him in the top of the head and kind of in the temple. He tried to stand, but it was over from that moment. Martin Goddard could have stopped it right there, honestly. Volk got some nasty ground and pound. Islam had his knee propped up against Volk's chin as he was hammering down on him. It was nasty to watch. And then this might be the downfall of Volkanovski, because he wants to fight Ilya in January still. In the post-fight interview, all I could say was, keep me busy. I still want to fight. I still want to fight. I want to fight in January. And DC even said, so Ilya in January for the featherweight belt is what you want. He's like, yeah, absolutely. Ilya could smoke him. Ilya has the power to knock Volk out, and coming off of a knockout loss like Volkanovski is in October, so what is that, 3 months? A 3-month recovery? I'm so worried for Volkanovski. He really might fall off after this. And if he takes the fight against Ilya and loses again, he really might be done. It really might be over for him. That would be so horrible to see, but I hope his team and his coaches give him good counsel and surround him with love and support, because he needs it right now. He needs to take some time off and think about his career. But as for Islam Makhachev, I think he's better than Khabib. I think he really might become the lightweight GOAT. He probably will face Justin Gaethje next. I think he beats him. And then Oliveira probably needs to fight Gamrot or something like that. And then, which Oliveira's going to smoke Gamrot. And then Islam really might beat Oliveira again. And if he does that, he's kind of the lightweight GOAT. So it's a very interesting time in the lightweight division and the featherweight division. If Volk takes that fight against Ilya and loses, it's going to be crazy. So hope you enjoyed the fights. This card kind of sucked. A couple of good fights on the main card, but sad to see Volk lose like that. But that's it. Goodbye.